The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The 3 biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Was Will Howard the right pick for them? Why didn't they get Shedeur Sanders?
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast.
I want to talk to you, Nick, about the quarterback position, because that might have been the most polarizing thing. I guess quarterback is always the most polarizing thing. When you don't have a franchise quarterback, everyone thinks that somebody's a superstar quarterback in weight. But I just remember seeing Steelers fans being so divided with the first round pick. Well, why did you get this DT? Why didn't you get Shedeur? And then as the draft went further and further, why aren't you getting a quarterback? And this level of panic was that was there. Do you feel like, Nick, and just you evaluate talent, you go over lots of tape, you watch things, across the board. Did you feel like the way that they handled this draft and then picking Will Howard was well done on their part? Or do you think that's just what they settled for and they mismanaged a few things?
No, I'm completely cool with them kicking and punting on this draft. I mean, we've talked about this before on this very podcast. Mm-hmm. I think as a talent, Shedeur is clearly better than the rest of the guys. I thought he was better than Dart, and Dart went in the first round. But I just know the tape of Shedeur, right? So there are other factors around Shedeur, obviously. Heard the reports about interviews. I don't know anything about that. I couldn't tell you about it because all I've done is stand at a podium for 5 minutes and listen to Shedeur talk. So I wouldn't know. But I thought Shedeur on tape was solid, but I never thought he was a franchise-changing quarterback. That was the thing, right? He was always a floor raiser, not a ceiling raiser. I think the Steelers need to go after a ceiling raiser. And I think when you get a guy like Will Howard, who in my opinion could have been drafted in the 4th round, and you could have called that a good pick, it's a good pick. I mean, this guy to me screams, decade-long backup in the NFL. Honestly, reminds me a little bit of Mason Rudolph in a few ways, right? Deep ball, the poise in the pocket. He's a little robotic, which is good and bad at times, just like Mason's a little robotic at times. He gets through his read. I wouldn't call him a super processor, but he's a good player that gets the ball to the right spots. He's accurate. His pressure to sack ratio, I think, is his biggest boon. I mean, this guy steps up in the pocket. He gets the ball out on schedule. If you give him clean pockets, he will win. Even in pressure situations, if he just needs to step up or move around the pocket, he can do it. This guy's a solid player in terms of backup role. And so, man, when you're getting into the 6th round and stuff, that's what you're looking for. You're looking for a long-term young guy with some backup upside. We've seen the death of the mid-round quarterback really throughout these last 3 or 4 drafts. Shuck went in the 2nd round, but really, once you kind of get through that 2nd round to 3rd round range, usually it doesn't happen until late 3rd, early 4th, where those QBs start coming off the board again, which is what we saw happen in this one. I don't think the Steelers messed this up at all. I think Will Howard is a completely fine pick for them. I think some of the guys that went in front of him, certainly he's better than. And so I think this is a completely fine pick. And they punted on this year's quarterback class. It was a bad QB class. We talked about it. Drafting one early, it wouldn't have necessarily been the same as 22, but it would have been very similar. It would have been forcing a pick just to take one, right? To take one, I think, is a bad idea if you don't believe that guy is the franchise quarterback. And that's what I've talked to, people in the organization, in the league about. Man, you don't just take a quarterback, just take a quarterback. That's what bad franchises do. And so the Steelers showed conviction. They had a long-term plan, and now they're going to stick with it. And so I'm completely fine with what they did here. And they got a great value pick in Will Howard. Again, I agree. The fact that he was there in the 6th round, I think, is kind of crazy to me. To me, this guy should have been drafted about 2 rounds earlier.
No, yeah, I'm right with you on that. I thought he was I thought Will Howard was an optimal choice in the 4th round. To get him in the 6th, great value. Like they figured that out. But I think the thing is that it's for some people, it's less about Will Howard and it's more about Shedeur Sanders. And it's more about Shedeur Sanders not, I guess, with his not being picked. Some people still believe, the truth is that, hey, like he is that guy. He just needs the opportunity. But I do wonder what your assessment is of how Shedeur Sanders handled this draft process, why he's still available, and all the different factors to kind of be aware of in that situation.
Yeah, and I think that's the interesting thing, right? Shedeur is this very you talk about polarization. I mean, is there a prospect that's ever been as polarizing as him?
I don't
I
know.
think the tape shows that he can be, I think, a solid NFL quarterback. We talked about some of his deficiencies. He doesn't have an elite arm. He runs into some pressure, creates his own pressure at times. He's got some things to work on in the lower body mechanics, specifically with his rotation mechanics. But he's a guy that is smart. He's good above the neck. He's very accurate. So there are definitely things to hang your hat on with him. But people are acting to me, and this is the thing about it is they're acting like this guy is going to win you Super Bowls. And
Right.
listen, I just don't see that with him. I really do admire Shedeur's confidence in himself.
Yeah,
I
same.
admire the belief he has in himself. I do. I just think in terms of the tape, when you watch it, there are some things there that are concerning for his ceiling at this level. I think for a floor, though, I think he can definitely be, a starting quarterback. I certainly think he can become one of your top 32 quarterbacks in the NFL. He should probably have a starting spot in the league at some point, as long as he can prove himself. And, there's a good shot that 5th-round pick ends up being much better than it's going to appear, right now. So I do like Shedeur as a player, but I just think, when people are saying, for example, Mel Kiper just going on and on
Oh
about
my
it.
gosh, that was so ridiculous.
I mean, my goodness. I mean, I feel like, you're acting like you're passing on a franchise-changing player. I just don't view Shedeur in that light.
Same.
I view him as a very solid player, but he is not a franchise changer. And if you are in the AFC, we've talked about this. Look at the quarterbacks the Steelers face in their division. Burrow, Jackson, and then when you go outside of it, Allen, Mahomes, Herbert, Stroud. I mean, so many great players at quarterback in this conference. So it's just really hard for me to buy into the kind of theory that you should get a floor raiser in the AFC. Floor raisers in the AFC don't mean jack. They don't. You need ceiling raisers to go toe for toe, because when it comes down to the playoffs, it's those quarterbacks that make the play. And listen, the Steelers, I understand the quarterback angst. The free agency process has been long and drawn out because Aaron Rodgers hasn't decided yet. You missed on Justin Fields. You missed on Sam Darnold. Russ went elsewhere. Okay, I understand it. You don't really have a clear starter right now. But listen, it's really it feels like somewhat of a transitional year. It does it not? I mean, they are kind of setting this up to be like, hey, 2026 is going to be our swing at quarterback. And this year we're going to find a patchwork solution, where that patchwork solution was a young guy with some upside like Fields or Darnold, or an older vet. It was going to be some type of bridge option. And none of them were going to be franchise-changing options. And I think that's what it comes down to. So I think you were going to be whelmed or underwhelmed by most of these options. And that's just the factor of it. And not pushing that button in the draft to kind of push this forward and take you out of the 2026 class is the correct decision. That you could not take one in the first round, because if you did, you're taking yourself out of a class that you view as pretty good. And the scouts do view it as good. And everyone says, the 2026 class, you don't know if it's going to be good. Well, listen, this time last year, they thought this class was going to be bad. 25 class was going to be bad. It ended up being bad. Scouts have a pretty solid idea, generally, of what the quarterback class is going to be a year ahead of time. So I can say with enough confidence that they're probably going to be right about that. It should be a little better in 26.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Halo as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. No, seriously, pair a controller or 4 to the Fire TV 4K stick and play your favorite Xbox games anywhere. If you're a hardened gamer and want to have your PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, and Xbox too, then this is for you. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On, all one word, Fire TV Locked On, to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, Fire TV Cube 3rd generation.
Just as everybody drew it up, Shedeur Sanders is a Cleveland Brown.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast.
this, after drafting Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel in the same draft, still sort of weird and crazy that the Browns drafted 2 quarterbacks, but here we are. It sets the stage for an interesting quarterback competition that features the likes of Joe Flacco, the savvy 41-year-old vet, who's back after the run in 2023, stealing the hearts of Cleveland fans everywhere. Kenny Pickett, once a hated rival, now in the quarterback room, making lots of conflicted feelings for fans who are trying to now cheer for the guy. And he has a legitimate chance, I think, to win this starting job when they open this thing up here in the coming weeks and months. And then 2 rookies, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon, the shorter stature guy who has some of the best numbers in college football history, second all time in total passing yards as a quarterback, and just steady Eddie guy who's super accurate and was consistent throughout his college career. And similarly, Shedeur Sanders, who's more of the build you look for in a quarterback, but lacks some of the athleticism. Can decision making is very much an elite trait or an elite thing for him, something that the Browns value as well. And similar to Gabriel, as I said, somebody who was consistent, I think, in the way that he played generally, and has a chance to be a superstar, partially because of who he is and his name, if he can develop at the next level and become an even better player. That's your competition. And so what's interesting about this now, I've been saying for a while, the Browns will carry 4 quarterbacks during the offseason. I actually just got in a back and forth with somebody on, I think it was the YouTube comment section. By the way, I am learning since taking over this podcast that the YouTube comment section can be a very, very, it's a rabbit hole. Like, you get sucked into it and you just keep responding to people, and you can't do it for hours and hours. I try to just go in and out when I can. But somebody had commented after my last mock draft on Monday that there's no way the Browns are taking 2 quarterbacks, because I had them taking, I think, Tyler Shuck, and then, Jalen Milroe, I think it was, and then Curtis Rourke later, like in the 6th or 7th round or something. I had them taking Curtis Rourke, like their second to last pick. And somebody was arguing with me in the comments that there's no way they're going to use a pick like that on a rookie quarterback and then waste that player by not having them make the roster and lose the value of like a rookie contract for a guy who was drafted that late. And I said, to me, it represents more bites at the apple, more opportunities to see, hey, can we find a quarterback late? Can one of these guys hit and become something for us? So there are certainly, I thought it was a possibility. I didn't think it would happen this way. I also thought they'd have a lot more picks than what they had. So, like, to end the draft sort of so abruptly with Friday night, you're drafting Dylan Gabriel. You have one more pick in Dylan Sampson, and then you take another quarterback and you're just done. It felt sort of weird, a weird way to end it all with all the picks they had to start the weekend. But this is where they ended up, and they did take 2 quarterbacks. And I felt like that was possible because this team was always going to go into the offseason and embark on this competition with 4 guys in that room, because that's what they do. They always have 4 guys in the offseason. Andrew Berry prioritizes that. And then they dwindle it. They cut it down to 3 once the season gets closer and you hit roster cutdown day. That's how I envision this thing playing out. It's exactly how it will play out. But here's the curious question now. You used a 4th round or a 3rd round pick on Dylan Gabriel. That pretty much makes it feel like he's kind of like, it was a top 100 pick that you used. He feels like he's probably pretty safe to make this roster because of the nature of where he was taken. You don't want to draft and then quickly move on from a 3rd round pick, especially at that position, if you think they can become something. And then Shedeur is being a 5th round pick, maybe a little less security with a 5th round pick. Obviously, 5th, 6th, and 7th round pick guys are guys who are sort of always going to be fighting for a roster spot. So, I'm not going to sit here and say like he's cemented into a spot. But again, it was a draft pick that you used. It was the last draft pick that you used in this draft. Are they really going to cut ties with Shedeur Sanders that quickly? And so that leads me back to like Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett territory, where I'm like, okay, which of these guys is the odd man out? Flacco feels like the guy that's supposed to sort of come in, knows the offense, keep this thing afloat, be the bridge option, whereas Kenny sort of feels like the reclamation project. And so all this to say, I don't know that this ends with one of the rookies getting cut. I think they will probably try to invest in these guys as much as they can. If Shedeur has a pretty good like camp and training camp, or he does decent, like it would be tough to expose him to the practice squad, because I think somebody would scoop him up eventually. Although I don't know, maybe they wouldn't, because nobody wanted him through this draft process anyway. And so maybe they wouldn't do that if the Browns tried to go about it that way and put him on the sneak him onto the practice squad. But I still think they would try to keep both these guys on the active roster behind whoever their starter was, or maybe the solution is trading a guy. And that feels like it's what's more likely. It feels like they'll audition all 4 of these guys, get to the end of training camp, and do the same thing they've done basically the last 2 years. Because 2 years ago, you remember, they traded Josh Dobbs right before the roster cutdown day. And they got, I don't think they got a 3rd round pick. I think they got like a 4th or a 5th round pick for Josh Dobbs, something like that. I can't remember off the top of my head. So they got draft capital out of it. I can see him doing the same thing. And maybe that means Kenny Pickett is the odd man out. Maybe they're going to let him audition in the preseason. He's had really good preseasons in the past, and then try to trade him right before the season starts and get some sort of draft capital in return. Or maybe they would do that with one of the rookies, probably more likely Shedeur Sanders, and see if he, puts together some nice tape, does some nice things during that time of year in the summer months, and then can be flipped for something before the season actually begins. I'd be fascinated. I am fascinated, as I'm sure you are as well, to see how this competition sorts itself out. What I would tell you sitting here today, and this is just kind of my early projection. We don't know anything. They haven't even taken the field yet. My early feeling on it would be Flacco probably wins the job to start the year, so he's here. Again, I don't think you're going to move on from Dylan Gabriel after using a 3rd round pick on him. That would be crazy. Unless you're getting a 3rd round pick in return, which I don't know if that's happening either. So it feels like it's going to end up being one of, they audition Shedeur and turn him into something that they can flip for a draft pick that's maybe even higher than the draft pick that they used on him, or maybe the same. Or it's Kenny Pickett and he becomes the guy that like you can sell to somebody. Because let's face it, the same reason Kirk Cousins wanted to wait till after the draft and may have to wait a little longer to get a trade done is the same reason that the Browns could potentially get something for somebody like Kenny Pickett at the end of training camp. There's always injuries. Some team's always going to lose a quarterback or a backup quarterback for that matter during training camp, during the preseason. And so that opens the door for a team to get desperate, swing a trade, get somebody in there that can maybe be a starter for you temporarily or for the season. And so the Browns will have some options here. Ultimately, it's a good problem to have. I don't think we need to be like sounding the alarms of like, what are they doing? Who are they going to keep? All these different things. I think it's going to be okay. But yeah, like this opens the door for one of these guys to probably get traded at the end of training camp, which shouldn't surprise anybody because it's what Andrew Berry has tended to do that time of year. Jeffrey Champion in the comments, by the way, says Joe Flacco could lose to Kenny Pickett. I think everybody's too low on Kenny Pickett. That's actually another good point too. I could have this backwards. I'm assuming Joe Flacco because they brought him in here as kind of the veteran of the class and the guy that feels like the bridge. But Kenny could go out there and play really well, and then maybe he earns the job, and then maybe Flacco's the one you're shopping to somebody that needs a veteran backup or just like a steady presence at some point. And that wouldn't be far-fetched either. So I guess at this point, I would probably lean that one of Kenny Pickett and Joe Flacco is winning that job. The 2 rookies have a better chance of being safe because they used picks on them. But if they're going to try to trade one, it might end up being Shedeur Sanders. But ultimately, I think like it would be one of the vets that probably gets shopped to reduce this quarterback room to 3, which is the process they always go through. Have 4 in the offseason and reduce it to 3 before the season starts. And I'm assuming the same thing's going to happen here this year, leading into the 2025 campaign. That is going to be a fascinating group to watch all offseason and leading up to the season. During the season, if they find a way to keep somebody like Shedeur around, I mean, he's a polarizing player even for a 5th round pick. And so it's going to be all eyes on that competition for obvious reasons, and get ready for some fireworks because, man, it's going to be constant debates during training camp of who had the best day and who's in front now, and between some polarizing players and some fan favorite players, and even some that used to be hated by the fans as well.
There's nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute Major League Baseball showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA playoff game. Finding great seats, though, that used to be a challenge until Game Time. With last-minute deals, all-in prices, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Plus, ticket prices actually drop as the beginning of the game gets closer, so you can score amazing seats at a great price. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
The Baltimore Ravens clearly won the 2025 NFL Draft with a sensational rookie class.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast.
Ravens draft class, they used up all 11 picks. Now, they made a couple of trades along the way, but they started off with 11 picks and they ended with 11 picks. Let's just do a quick recap. 1 through 11 of those draft picks. Number 27, they took Malachi Starks, safety from Georgia. 59, Mike Green, the edge from Marshall. 91, Emory Jones Jr., offensive lineman from LSU. 129, Teddy Buchanan, linebacker from California. 141, Carson Vinson, an offensive lineman from Alabama A&M. Bilal Kone, the corner from Western Michigan at 178. Tyler Loop, kicker from Arizona at 186. LeJonte Wester, wide receiver from Colorado at 203. Then at 210, Anise Peebles, the defensive lineman from Virginia Tech. Robert Longerbeam at 212, corner from Rutgers. And finally, 243, guard Garrett Dellinger out of LSU. Look, it's a very solid haul, in my opinion. Baltimore, they went best player available. They addressed needs, and they got value. Okay, this was a value draft. Now, not every single pick was that, right? Not every single pick was perfect, but I also factor in round valuation and how I do things. If you listened or watched our bonus episode where I did grade each and every single pick, I tried to separate as best as I could individual player pick, like who that person is as a player, what their scouting report looks like, and then the overall Ravens team grade. I thought a lot of picks Baltimore had, that the individual player, you got A's, A pluses, B pluses, like really solid profiles. The way the Ravens got there were a lot of good moves. There were a couple of bad moves, and we'll talk about that a little bit more today. But I think the first thing that I want to get into when it comes to this class is the fact, and I've been shouting this from the rooftops forever. We've talked about it with former Ravens, with analysts. The Ravens needed instant impact, right? I think that was one of the biggest things that I was looking at when it came to what would classify or what would make this a successful draft for the Ravens, right? Projects are great. High upside is great. You know, you can swing on that if you want to, and Eric Costa certainly does every season, sometimes earlier than later, or sometimes he just does it later. But the Ravens, much like we saw last year, the impact they got from Nate Wiggins and Roger Rosengarten as rookies was a big reason why Baltimore was so successful last season. And this year, I think they're going to get that production from their first two picks again, Malachi Starks and Mike Green. Malachi Starks is someone that can slot in immediately. We've talked about him for the past handful of days here. We talked about him early on in the draft process when we were doing our mock drafts on Locked On Ravens. I actually think Malachi Starks was the first Ravens mock draft I had, and then I think Mike Green was my second. Maybe I'm not remembering it right, but I know those two, we talked about them very early on in the process as potential first-round picks. Baltimore gets Malachi at 27 and Mike Green at 59. And both those guys free up opportunities for other players. Again, the big thing with Malachi Starks is him being able to, again, if the reports are true that Baltimore wants to keep him in his deep role, it'll be interesting to see how the Ravens deploy Malachi Starks or even Ardarius Washington if they sign another big safety to play that Swiss Army knife role. But if they want to put Kyle Hamilton back and give him that freedom, which is what I personally think they should do, have him play all over the field, Malachi Starks can play the deep half of the field for you. He's a very smart football player, very smart person. He knows what he's doing. He has a plan, the ball awareness, the ball skills. And to me, the fact that he can also come up and play the run is really important too. He will miss some tackles. You know, he could stand maybe add a bit more to his frame, but still, the big thing with him is he's going to be able to come in with Kyle Hamilton and make a pretty dynamic duo. And then Mike Green comes in as a star, in my opinion. You know, he's pro ready. He's ready to make an impact day one. And I said this, and this might be a bit of a bold prediction, and we'll have a bold prediction episode, you know, a couple months from now. We'll probably do one before the season starts. But I think Mike Green has the potential by the time week one is over to become Baltimore's best pass rusher on the roster already. It's not a shot at Odafe Oweh. It's not a shot at Kyle Van Noy. I just think that's how good Mike Green is. I'm not trying to take away anything from anybody else on the Ravens roster, but Mike Green is so NFL ready. Again, 17 sacks at Marshall in his final year. Beat up on teams like Ohio State. So, you know, the small school accusations to me don't really, you know, they don't add up. Mike Green did play against some good schools and he dominated that tape. You can watch the Ohio State game where the viral clip is his devastating spin move, which again, he plays the run aggressively. He's a high motor guy. You know, on the field, he fits exactly what the Ravens are, which is 110% on every play. He's physical, speed to power guy. If he adds more strength, even just a little more strength, he's going to be even more devastating than he already is. He has a pass rushing plan. He knows how to use his moves and execute his moves to the best of his ability. There's just so much to like about Mike Green, not just the fact that he is such a dominant pass rusher, but also in the run game, he is a pure 3-down ready player day one in the NFL. And that's exactly what this Ravens pass rushing group needed. And on top of that, yes, every pick wasn't a home run like a Malachi Starks or a Mike Green, but I thought that they had solid options like Emory Jones. I liked the pick. He was on my short list of guys I would have been perfectly fine with them taking at 91. Would have preferred to trade up for Wyatt Milum. I understand that, he might not have fit Baltimore's system as clean as other guys, but I still feel like that could have been a day one impact starter. I think Emory Jones, he has the potential to be a starter. I'm not taking him out of that equation, but he's someone that I think might need a year or two, and maybe they see him more as a swing tackle. They kind of hinted at his role year one, so we'll see. Then you talk about Teddy Buchanan and some of those day 3 picks where I actually like the Teddy Buchanan pick. Again, I don't really care as much about positional value. If a guy can play, a guy can play. And Baltimore did need inside linebackers, right? You had 3 on the roster before this draft started with Roquan, Trenton Simpson, and Jake Hummel. Buchanan can come in, be a special teams contributor. He can cover guys. He's uber athletic. I liked that. The trade back to 141, and it's not against Carson Vincent. I tried to make that clear on yesterday's bonus episode. It's not against Carson Vincent. It's why I tried to separate player grade from team grade. I thought the trade back, they got too cute. I thought they got too cute at the end of day 2, and I thought they got too cute in the middle of day 3. And that's just my honest opinion about it. They moved back 5 spots in the 4th round to move up 5 spots, in the 6th round. So you end up going 5 spots back in a more valuable round and only move up 5 spots in a less valuable round. In order to make that trade worth it for you, you would have had to move up more spots in the less valuable round. And Baltimore, even if you didn't like the Teddy Buchanan pick, they still had opportunities to take defensive linemen that were really good, that were day 2 guys, in my opinion, at 136. That they could have taken a 129, but they fell to 136. Joshua Farmer out of Florida State and Cam Jackson out of Florida. Maybe Baltimore thought one or both would fall to them and trading back 5 picks wasn't a big deal. Well, the Patriots nabbed Joshua Farmer away, and then Carolina at 140, 1 pick before Baltimore, took Cam Jackson. And then Baltimore ended up taking another offensive lineman in the 7th round. So I didn't like that process personally. I thought that they could have gotten a really solid player. Not that Vincent isn't a good player and that he has potential. Like, again, he's not going to start for you year 1. He's going to be a developmental player. But I thought they could have handled that a little bit differently. Outside of that, though, Baltimore still, I thought, had one of the best, definitely the best draft in this class, if we're honestly thinking about it. I thought the Patriots had a really solid class. I thought the Steelers did a decent job as well. There were teams that did a good job. I'm not saying that the Ravens, they're the only team that did well. No, I thought the Falcons, they traded a future 1 away. I don't think the trade itself was great for Atlanta to get James Pierce, but, they doubled down on edge, doubled down on safety. I thought that the Cowboys had a really nice draft. I loved their pick of Tyler Booker, Savon Revel, and, even a Donovan Izaraku. Like, that's a really solid draft. The Jaguars getting Travis Hunter was awesome. I thought Mike McDonald in Seattle had a really nice class as well. There are a couple of others also. But I thought that Baltimore got Baltimore checked every box, in my opinion. And that's something I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Best player available strategy. Boom. Addressed needs. Boom. Value across the board for the most part. Boom. Again, I'm not trying to tell you every pick was an A+. And if you want to go back and listen, if you haven't already, to my grades, I laid out kind of where I went with my class and with my grades for the class. But I still think that overall, especially with me weighing the picks of Malachi Starks and Mike Green a little heavier than I would a Garrett Dellinger in the 7th round, this class, and this is my prediction, it's going to make or break on Mike Green. It is what it is, right? I think that the Ravens lucked into a bit of value, and maybe, look, for Mike Green, maybe he just was off so many teams' boards that, everybody had the perception of, with the off-field stuff, he'll go, even though that's a thing. He'll go in the 1st round, top 15, top 20. Maybe, the media and everybody we didn't account for the slide that he was going to have, right? Maybe that just is what it is. And his real range was in the middle to late 2nd round. And really not a lot of people caught wind of that. So I don't know. Aeneas Peoples definitely saved them a little bit. I would have been a lot harsher if they weren't able to get Aeneas Peoples because you lost out on plenty. This was an all-time defensive line class, and Baltimore almost got nobody on the interior.